Okay, I'm on here a little bit early. Let's see. I'm on here a little bit early, but I'm just gonna get set up while I wait for 4 o'clock to get here. So to everybody that's in the chat, everybody that's here for the live, thanks for coming out, and thank you to. Well, I get started in a bit. Hey, hey, how's it going? Okay, okay, okay. All right. Hi, everybody. It's Daryl from Dreadnought Woodshop. This is my first time ever doing a YouTube live. I was invited by Easy Wood Tools to come on and do a little bit of turning for you today. I have somebody monitoring the chat, so if you have questions, feel free to ask, and I'll get to them as we go. And also there's a giveaway. I'm going to try to put the link for it in the description box below, maybe after we're done with the live. So anyway, thanks for coming and checking out my live. So I'm going to attempt to turn a little hollow formed. I'm going to be, just for fun, I'm going to be using a piece of wood. I process a lot of my own materials, and I end up with these little pieces, these little weird looking things here. And I thought it would be fun to show you what you could do with something like this, right? So to get it on the lathe, I'm going to be using one of these, which is a flexible point center. And you put these right in your chuck, and I'm going to switch the camera over so you can see me do that. And these things also help to get your workpiece centered so that you don't have to really mark center or anything like that. So let's get over and get to that. So let's see, where's my check key? All right, so I tried to put everything right here at hand so that I wouldn't be looking for stuff, but right off the bat, here we go. Let's see. Crap. All right. So anybody that's out there in the chat, let me know if you can't hear me. It's showing that I have pretty good audio, so hopefully you can. Let's see. So before we try to mount this thing on the lathe, one thing we're going to need to know is we're going to need to know how big to make our tenon, right? And I did a little example. I did a little sample earlier to make sure I had everything I needed. So, I had this already set, but I'm going to go ahead and take my calipers here. I don't really need the gauge. I just need to know about how big this is. All right, so I know about how big to make my tenon. We'll set that aside. Okay. We're going to mount this in here, and I mount this flexible center deal in here. Okay. The nice thing about these is the point is spring-loaded. You'll also notice that the live center is the same design. What that allows you to do is that allows you to basically center the work on the lathe. So what I can do is bring this up, bring that out, and now that the points are engaged, I can just kind of spin it and see if this is kind of where I want it. If not, no big deal, because they're spring loaded, I have the tailstock locked down already. I can just push against one side and adjust. And I can adjust it pretty much wherever I want it. Sorry about that. I have my wife. She's working on the Bluetooth, trying to help me, field the questions and whatnot. So I just need just a second to get right because I can't seem to find the chat. Hmm. Okay. All right. So I had a question. I had somebody ask about the rack behind me. Which rack was it? Are you talking about the chuck rack or the tools? For the chuck jaws. Okay. Let me switch cameras and we'll take a look at that. This chuck rack here, or the chuck jaws. So this is my chuck jaws rack. I have quite a few of the Nova chuck jaws in my collection, and I got tired of putting them in drawers and taking them in and out of boxes when I needed to use them. So I made this, and it's basically just strips of plywood, and I cut 90-degree little V's out of it, and that allows me to just place these jaws in, hold these jaws on the wall, and it works out really nicely. One of the nice things about it is I have all of the jaws in there in order, because as you know, most chucks, the jaws are ordered. So number 1 is on the left, and it goes 1 through 4 from left to right. I hope that covered it well enough. So anyway, let me jump back over here to the lathe. Let's see. Okay. I hope that answered your question pretty, sufficiently. Let's see, YouTube. There we go. Okay. All right. So getting back to this. So, all right. So with the flexible point centers, I can adjust these to see. So getting back to this. I can adjust these so that I can get this centered without having to mark center on the piece. And for things like this, it's really with the flexible point centers, it's really hard to find center to see. So getting back to this, top face of this, so I can adjust these so that I can get the center without having to mark center on the piece. And for things like this, so with the flexible point centers, it's really hard to find center to see. So getting back to this, so I can adjust these so that I can get the center without having to mark center on the piece. And for things like this, so with the flexible point centers, it's really hard to find center to see. So getting back to this, so I can adjust these so that I can get the center without center. And for things like this, so with the flexible point centers, it's really hard to find center to see. So getting back to this, so I can adjust these so that I can get the center without center. I give them some of my leftovers. So with the flexible point centers, it's really hard to find center to see. So getting back to this, so I can adjust these so that I can get the center without center. That fix it? Oh, man. Okay, I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm just going to run with it. I'm going to have my wife call in for questions. I just want to make sure that I get the demo done, so here we go.
Echo gone.
Good. So anyway, I have this mounted between centers. And now I can go ahead and start to shape it. So let's get on that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start to get the bottom section of this round. So we're going to take our bowl gouge and get started with that. Anytime you move your tailstock, or move your tool rest, you want to make sure that you always have clearance. So let's get back to it.
What are you using?
Oh. This is a piece of camphor. This is a piece of camphor wood that I harvested here locally. It's also very green at this. It's very, very green at this point. I haven't allowed it to dry at all, which makes for a little bit nicer turning experience. Okay. Okay. Now, now that I have this bottom portion kind of rounded out, so that's where my measurement with the calipers come in. So I want to take this and I want to come up far enough that it starts to catch. And I'm going to make a mark right there, and that's going to be my guide for where I'm going to place my tenon. Okay. So now I got my mark there. I'm going to switch to my spindle gouge, and I'm going to start working on putting a tenon here so that we can get this mounted in the chuck. All right, good. So I make that just a little bit bigger to make sure that I'm going to have a good fit in the chuck. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and finish. I'm going to finish shaping out a bit of this part here because it's easier access at this point while I have it mounted this way. Now as we get ready to turn this around and put it in the chuck so that we can start to shape the top and get ready to start hollowing, you're going to go ahead and part off this bit down here that we don't need. I'm going to be using a parting gauge for that. Because my drive spur and my live center have spring-loaded tips, you don't want to cut that all the way through because it'll compress it in and bind up on the tool. So I'm going to use a pull cut saw, pull cut saw to go ahead and cut that off. All right. Anytime you're ready, Jamie. All right. So now we have a tenon that should fit in our chuck very nicely this way so that we can start working on the top of it. So I go ahead and just give me a moment while I reconfigure this lathe here, and we'll get right to it. At this point, we don't really need we don't absolutely have to have the tailstock here, but I just figure for this this edge right here is fairly irregular, and it would be safer to go ahead and bring the tailstock up at least until we get rid of that part and get this a little bit truer. So now at this point, we can go ahead and shape this to pretty much whatever shape we want. So let's get to it. I was really lucky when we harvested this wood because you could see that it's got some really nice figure in it, and some there's going to be some really nice chatoyancy effects in this piece of wood once we get done with it. Very nice. The lathe I'm turning on is a Powermatic 3520C. I was fortunate enough that actually, the coronavirus has affected my business a little, but I was able to make enough money over the shutdown to actually upgrade my lathe a little bit, and I was able to pick this beauty up. I'm turning at about 1300 RPM right now. At this point of the turn, and I mean, this is where you can let your imagination go wild. You could turn it. You can make whatever shapes you want. Let's see. Need a little bit more room here. All right. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and attempt to sand this a little bit, but because it's so green it may not I may not get the result that I'm looking for, but give that a shake. Oops. Before we get started. I found that it doesn't really do any good to sand at a really high speed. I always turn my speed down to about anywhere between 500 and 700 RPM when I'm sanding, because when you sand higher, you think about it, your sandpaper is doing much more work because there's a lot more material going past your material in a short amount of time, and it's uncomfortable because it heats up. So, sanding at a lower speed is always preferable. Got a little ridge in there. Let's go back and look at that. Got a little ridge right here. Let's go back and touch that up a little bit. All right. See how we're doing on time. Sorry, I keep bumping into that camera. When you're turning greenwood, normally on a hollow form like this, I would probably turn it and have a lid or a finial or something like that. But when you're turning greenwood, that's not a great plan because it will shift on you as it dries. So for this one, I'm just going to try to preserve a little bit of this natural edge I got going up here at the top. Yes. I'm using Robert Sorby Excelsior. The Robert Sorby Excelsior line. It's a titanium nitride coated stainless steel, which allows you to get a sharper edge than standard high-speed steel. Alright. So now that we've done what we're going to do with the outside here, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the hollowing. Just have that. Yeah. I misplaced another tool. Just give me a sec. Get right back with you. Is the what? Yes, the chuck is also a Sorby Patriot. Yeah, I've actually I heard quite a few people mention the adding wax to the sandpaper. I've actually never tried that. That's something that I'll have to look into. Thanks for the tip. What happened to that tool? Okay. All right, I'll have to have another plan. All right. Oh. This laughing's killing me. You hear me? No. This a lot of things killing me. No, I got it. Yeah, I'm not sure about what type of wax to use to do that. Again, I haven't tried that before. That's something that I'll have to look into. Maybe the person... Oh, good. Thanks, Carl. Okay. No. Rocky? Lathe? Yeah. Okay. So, I had a really cool boring tool that I was going to use to drill out this hole, but I seem to have misplaced it. So I'm going to go with a brad point bit and a drill truck. So I'm basically going to mark I'm not what? Oh. So I'm going to mark this approximately where I want to be. So I'm going to go about there. Alright, keep that mark on top so I can see it. Alright. Go ahead and Alright, now that I have a starter hole, and this hole is going to serve as my depth stop at this point. So I've drilled it approximately to the depth I want to go. So then I'm going to go ahead and go through this hole here. Let me change this around so you can see the other view. So I'm going to go through this hole with my hollowing tool, and go ahead and hollow out the inside of this. When you're hollowing, you do most of your work blind, so it's a good idea to stop frequently, as you'll see me do that. And also, it's a really good idea to have compressed air, particularly if you're hollowing green wood, because those shavings get packed up in there, and you really can't. Once they're packed up in there, you really can't cut anymore. So my hollowing tool here is basically a scraper. So I want to set my blade to cut just above center, and then I'm going to angle it down to I'm going to set it just above center and then angle it down to cut. And this tool has an articulating head, and it can be adjusted at pretty much anywhere 360 degrees, although 300 putting it way over here may not do any good, but you can rotate this as you get down into the piece. I have it set pretty much straight so that I can advance down the piece there. Let's go back up. All right, here we go. So at first, what I want to do is I want to be able to I really want to open up access so that the tool has room to work. Let me see if I can get this camera in here a little bit closer. It's a Sorby chuck. It's the Sorby. It's the Sorby Patriot chuck. See if I can get it. Okay. All right. So I'm hoping that this angle is going to work without me getting in the way. So we'll see. So anyway, at this point, what I really want to do is I want to make access, because I'm going to need to rotate this cutter at some point to get out here to the shoulder. So I need to make some room so that I need to make some room below the neck of this piece so that I can get down in there and do what I got to do. So here we go. All right. Let me make some camera adjustments here because I'm bumping it with my shoulder. All right. Okay, so right now, see, I'm putting pressure on here, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. The reason why is because it's all packed up full of wet shavings. So that's where the compressed air comes from. This is just a cheap air gun that I got from Harbor Freight. It works really well. If you don't want to have a face full of sawdust, wait a minute, something's bumping there. If you don't want to have a face full of sawdust, I find it's helpful to put your hand over the mouth of the hollow form and kind of direct it with your hand, so you can see that I'm trying to direct the air kind of away from me, and then put the gun in there. There you go. Alright. Now it's time to make the adjustments on the head to start opening up that hole. I don't know if the camera's going to show it very well, but this screw head gets pretty packed up with chips. You want to make sure that this goes for any tool that has any kind of cutter on it that is mounted with a screw. You want to make sure that you blow that out or pick it out with like a dental pick before you put your Allen wrench or whatever tool that you need to adjust it. You want to make sure you do that beforehand, because if you don't, then what will happen in the case of this Allen wrench, because it's not fully seated down in there, it'll start to strip the screw head at the top. So you want to make sure that you're not putting it in there on top of chips and things. I find it very handy to have compressed air at the lathe. I keep a small pancake compressor right here underneath my lathe at all times when I'm turning. So now that I've turned the cutter out, I can get out into some of these areas under the shoulder. I'm going to be doing a lot of this stop and go because there's quite a bit of chips in here, and like I said, they just pack up into like a big wall of chips, and so you end up struggling with that versus actually cutting the inside of your hollow form. Okay. All right. So I don't know how well you can see that, but there's quite a bit of junk in there. So I'm going to try to show you exactly how much stuff we're talking. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that hole is not very big. Another thing too is if you're using a tool and it's a scraper-based tool especially for hollowing where you're going to be extended out over the bed, the thing that you got to remember is with scrapers, you want to cut, like I said, you want to cut, set your cutter just above center, and you want to cut down to center. So the thing you have to remember is as you get further out, what you're going to end up having to do is you're going to have to, in order to maintain that position, you're going to have to kind of let the back end of the tool down somewhat to continue the cut. Because otherwise what you're doing is if you're off the rest here, you're going lower and lower and lower. So what you have to do is as you go in, you just have to like pick the tool up to maintain that same point of contact. Yes, I have. I tried the Easy Red hollowing tool, and I do rather like them. Today for this demo, I was just trying something different. All right. So anyway. Okay, so another thing about hollow forms is, well, really anything that you're turning and you have to hollow it, particularly when you can't see what you're doing, you want to make sure that you keep track of the bottom of your piece. All right, so I'm going to switch to the top camera here again. I made this, I call it a bottom saver. It's really more like a shop-made depth finder. And basically all I did is, this is just a piece of, I think it's, I want to say that's hickory, and I took a little piece of hickory, I drilled a hole through it. This is a piece of 1/4 inch. This is a piece of 1/4 inch steel round bar from Home Depot. I cut a length of that, and I went ahead and I drilled this hole and I actually tapped the wood versus using a threaded insert. And what I did is once I tapped that hole, I went ahead and went back with some thin CA and applied a little bit of thin CA to the threads, and then went back with the tap one more time to clean it up, which really does a good job of hardening up those threads. And this works quite well. And basically what you want to do is pick a point. The fact that this one has a live edge is, it's a little bit of a concern, but not too much because it's mostly flat. So you take this, loosen it up, right? You place it inside, push it to the bottom, to the lowest point that you've turned to, lock it down, then you can pull it out and you can check your progress. And you can see, especially from this viewpoint right here looking down, you can see that I'm pretty much where I need to be, right? And you want to keep an eye on those things because trying to make a vase, not a funnel. And the other thing is I just use my fingers as I go along to check the thickness of the walls. But there are tools that are made for that. They're called calipers. I'm trying to sight mine. Well, I don't really have a target thickness for this piece because this piece is just really kind of for a demo. But usually I like to get down just under 1/4 inch is where I usually like to go. No, some people rough turn their green projects. I don't do that. I actually really like the effect that you can get with letting things dry and warp a little bit. Matter of fact, let me grab a piece real quick and I'll show you some of the cool things some of the cool things that can happen with your work when you let it dry. Sorry? So, I got it. So, if you look at this piece, I don't know how well this is going to show because this is really like blown out. Let's see if maybe one of the other cameras will capture it here. Okay, that's better. So, this piece right here, I turned out of a piece of very green magnolia, as in my friend cut it down the block maybe 4 or 5 hours before I started turning the thing. So some of the unfortunate things that happen is you'll get little cracks in places. This is not a big deal for me. I'll go back and sand this down a little bit. It's actually dry now. I just haven't got back to it. I turned this maybe 2 or 3 months ago. So I've checked it, and it's no longer losing weight, so it's ready to go because it's pretty thin. But the thing I wanted to point out is I like doing the green stuff and turning it to its finished form because of things like this. I don't know if that's showing, but you have this piece right here, and it's kind of sunk in right there. And then you have this piece right here that kind of looks like an eye. Now, one of the reasons why I haven't finished it is because I thought about embellishing that. I don't know if I'm going to do some wood turning or what, but anyway, I really enjoy that, and I enjoy a nice subtle curve wave to the top of a bowl that you also get from turning it green and letting it warp naturally. Let me think about it. I think it was the larger version of this tool right here. I have a larger version of this tool. In fact, there's two. There's this is the multi-tip hollower, and there's also a tool called the Hollow Master that has a swan neck to it, and those are the tools that I used actually to hollow this piece. So, and I'm sorry. Oh. And also, one of the other things I wanted to point out about this piece too, the other reason why this cracked on the bottom, right, is because I left the pith in it. So you can see the pith right there. Typically you want to cut that out. But the reason why I did it is because I wanted, if you can see the grain on this, it goes all the way around in complete circles, right? And then you have some of these smaller circles that you end up with anyway, but really what I wanted were these complete circles out here. You can even see a little bit of that on the inside. Maybe not through this camera, but when you look down on the inside, you can see complete circles as well. And I just thought that would be a nice look. And I knew the dangers, but you know, we do what we do. So back to the hollowing. One of the things, this is a caliper. It's a very big one. They make them in different sizes, and you can use this to tell you what the wall thickness of your hollow form is. So basically, the way this works, let's switch back to the top camera here. Okay, so basically the way this works, they have two different curves on here, right? And this is due to how much access you have to get these tip points down in there, and also, you know, the shape of the piece. So basically, the two ends of this, when this is closed, right? So when I put this in here, right, I can look at the other end, which I don't know how I would show that. Let's see. I don't want to move these cameras because this whole situation's a little fidgety. Okay, so when I put this in, you can see that there's a gap here, and that looks to be a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. So down here at the bottom of my hollow form, I'm pretty much where I want to be, right? But as you come up, you'll see that it gets wider. So yeah, that might show it better. So it gets a little bit wider as you come up, and you can use tools like this to check your progress. And there's also another type that you can use for the shoulder, because as you get up towards the shoulder, see, obviously I can't get down up under here to check it. At this point, it wouldn't do me any good anyway, because I haven't really started to hollow this area back here. So let me get back to that. All right, I've been told that I got about 15 minutes left, so if you guys have any questions or anything, my lovely wife is watching the chat for me and whispering sweet nothings in my ear. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them. But for the rest of the time, I guess I'll go ahead and finish hollowing this out, see how much of that I can get done before my 15 minutes are up. Say that again. Oh, I am a native Floridian, 100%. I'm actually a country boy. I was raised in a small town called named Osteen. Local people, when I tell them I'm from Osteen, they go, "Oh, you mean the skip shoes and boots on the back road to the beach, right?" So that's how small my town was. I just didn't. Somehow I managed to not pick up a twang, I guess. Yeah. So now that I'm starting to come up the walls here, and I'm starting to get out here to the shoulder. So now that I'm starting to get out to the shoulder, I want to rotate this cutter around so that I can reach out, further, deeper into the shoulder. So now with the tool, let's see if the top camera will show this better. So now that I have this rotated out more, you can see how I can get, once I imagine that this is the mouth of the piece, I can go in, and once I get past the neck, I can rotate this out and I can actually cut underneath this shoulder here. It's a little tricky getting in there because now the tool is considerably wider. So what I kind of have to do is kind of like bring it in, and then once I'm in there, then I can engage the tool and I can go to that shoulder. One other thing when I'm doing these hollow forms is I like to try to take some of the material out behind this behind the shoulder first, and then once I have some of that out of the way, then I like to go down to the bottom on the inside, and I like to try to get that relatively close to the wall thickness I want it. And then as I work up, I will cut in this area here, but I'll take my cutter back to this bottom area down here as a point of reference, not so much to cut, but kind of to set where it's at. And then I softly bring it up until I start to hit resistance from material that should be removed, and then I'll go back and forth and remove that material, and that helps me to keep a consistent wall as I work my way up the piece, right? A word of advice for anybody who's never done a hollow form before. Here, let me switch up here. So some advice for somebody who's never done a hollow form before goes pretty much like any other advice I give anybody who's never done something before. You should expect to ruin quite a few, right? Maybe not all in a row. Maybe you'll start to make some progress and ruin one. It happens. But you're going to have to make some crappy ones to make some great ones. And, if you follow me on any of the older social medias, you know that you may have heard me say that Dreadnought Woodshop has nothing to do with my hair. Oops, hair, haha. It's actually more about people casting aside whatever their perceived limitations are and getting out there and trying to make something. Because the fact of the matter is, if you invest enough time and effort into anything, I mean, you may not ever become a master, right? That may not be your goal, but you will achieve a level of proficiency. So, if you've never tried this, you've never tried making a hollow form or never turned anything on the lathe at all, if you have access to one, I recommend you go out and at least try it, because you just might be great at it, I guess this is kind of wrapping up. Anybody have any last minute questions? Yes, this is the Sovereign handle. This is um, the 16-inch, I believe, with an extension. Oh no, this is the 12-inch with an extension on it. Yes, you position the cutter so that it is just above center, and with this, because it's a scraper, you put it just above center and then you angle the tool down so that you're cutting at center, because that's how you use scrapers. Well, it's hard to say that it won't ever. It has to do with, I guess, it has to do with the way you use the tool. I mean, you can get a catch with pretty much anything. So it just depends on how you use it. This one does have, the bar is round on this side and then flat on this side. I'm not sure how well that shows, but it's flat on the bottom and round on the top. The reason why is because there's also a, this is a shear scraping head that goes on there. This is the bigger version of that tool, and you use the round side for shear scraping and the flat side for cutting or scraping. So there's a lot of people that do a lot of hybrid wood turning. I love the hybrid stuff, I really do. But one of the things that I enjoy the most is I enjoy a nice challenging turn. So turning things that have cracks in them and they have voids in them and inclusions and things like that is kind of my thing, So I don't tend to turn to stabilization and or hybridization nearly as much as some. In fact, I got a piece right over here. I'm gonna go grab that and I'll bring it back and show you kind of what I mean. So this piece right here, surely I could have put some. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. What am I making for the demo? I was making this hollow form over here. Let's see where to go. Hopefully soon. Yeah, this is the first one ever. I think it got off to a rocky start, but hopefully it was at least entertaining. I kind of like both. I really like turning small hollow forms because it's a good opportunity to explore shape and form without the potential of consuming a lot of material. It's invaded. Invaded. Oh, what's that mean? Being invaded. Yes. Yeah, what's that mean? I've never been afraid of you, Jamie. This is the UVEX. Typically, I use a respirator from Peak Safety, but I can't talk through it because it seals your face off pretty good. So it's difficult to use it in situations like this. Yes, I am self-taught. Oh, pair it off to finish. Yeah, I could pair it off. But I haven't finished hollowing it yet, but I was running out of time, so I switched to answering questions. But yeah, I could part that off. No big deal. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, that was my warning call for 4 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If anybody has any last minute questions, you got a couple of minutes, and then we're going to hop out of here. Yes, I'm definitely up for being invaded. Okay. All right. Major influences. As far as wood turning, it would be my buddy Kurt Keys, Xyloid Creations on Instagram. He's the one who started all this wood turning stuff for me. He gave me a lathe and kind of pushed me into it. So that's that guy. And then Mark Spagnolo for woodworking in general. Yeah. Um, Okay, so that's it. Thanks everybody for joining me on my first ever YouTube live. Hopefully, it will not be my last. And yes, I am planning on doing some remote demos. And again, thanks everybody for joining me in the shop. Thank you to EasyWood and Carl Jacobson for allowing me to be a part of this virtual demonstration to keep all of our bored fellow Americans during this pandemic entertained and educated. And again, like I always say, dread not and make something. Peace. Oh, all right. So one last question. This piece right here, I'll probably put a CA finish on it once I get it turned down the rest of the way. And what was the other question, Melinda? I have 3 cameras. I have the web camera on my computer, and I have 2 Logitech. You can see this one right here. 2 of the Logitech 9000 webcams. All right. Try not make something. Peace. Out of here.